Today, I want to take a little bit of a different path than is typical when we're talking about lead generation. Oftentimes, we focus on the marketing and how to actually generate more leads, the tactics and the strategies to do that. Or maybe we're talking about sales and the processes and the systems that we need to actually work these internet leads and turn them into deals. And instead, today, I want to talk specifically to lead providers and aggregators about our number one problem. And that is simply lead buyer or customer churn. We're constantly turning over our lead providers, and it feels like we're on a treadmill, just constantly chasing more lead providers to fill that gap in our network. Of course, in order to solve any sort of problem, we need to get to the actual source of the issue. And if you've been in this business for any length of time, you know this is the fundamental problem. All leads suck. Like I said, if you've been in this business for more than a day, you've heard this from a customer. Your leads suck. The quality is awful. I can't get anybody on the phone. I can't turn any of these into apps. Well, if you're actually in the business of lead generation, you know that probably that's not entirely the truth. We know what goes into actually doing these marketing campaigns and programs. We know the effort with which the consumer actually puts into filling out a lead form or making a phone call. So we're pretty confident that there is a reasonable level of intent with each of these consumers that we actually sell out to our buyers. The fundamental problem is perhaps slightly different from lead quality. In my experience, whenever I'm dealing with a lead quality issue or a consumer that is starting to churn on me, if I really peel back the onion, I fundamentally find one of two real reasons for their frustration or lack of success with internet leads. One, they're just simply inexperienced. They're new to the business. Maybe they're a new loan officer or they're a new insurance agent, new solar installer. They've simply not worked internet leads at all and probably haven't actually worked in their business very long. So their fundamental sales skills are just not where they need to be in order to work any type of lead for that matter. The second piece, and this is probably the more prevalent, is we've actually got somebody, individual salesperson or maybe a sales team, that's at a reasonable level of skill and maybe even been in the business for years because they have the capacity to actually buy the leads that we're selling. The problem, though, is all of their experience, all of their expertise, which is considerable, has actually been built on top of referrals. So they've built their business on talking to friends and family, a network of referral partners, and they filled their CRM and their database with people that they know. Of course, in this digital first, internet first world that we're in post-pandemic, that's actually not how most people start looking for these type of products anymore. They're actually coming to the internet, and the relationship is not at the front of the sales process, but it actually comes after that initial outreach and sales process. And just fundamentally, that's an entirely different type of sales process. And so as a result, they actually run up against a lot of friction because, again, this is a situation of lead management. We don't actually know the customer yet. We don't actually have a relationship. So they perhaps shouldn't even be in our customer relationship management system. This has always been my argument for lead management. Again, so fundamentally, their sales skills are actually misaligned with this type of lead. So as we go into this talk and I try to build out a solution for lead providers and aggregators to get over this fundamental problem, you may be wondering, who exactly is this for in the sort of broad spectrum of lead providers? Well, I've tried to actually tailor it and I've actually applied it in a lot of different places. So you could be a relatively small lead provider. You might not even have a sales team, or maybe it's just you generating leads right now and you're actually reaching out to your own customers. So this is effective. Even if you don't have a sales team or you're small and just starting your initial sales team and want to start making this process of seeking out and getting and landing lead buyers a little bit easier. Or maybe you're a large lead provider and you've got a whole set of sales team, but those sales teams in and of themselves probably have a high churn rate because they're constantly chasing after those lead providers, those whales out in the market. They probably all got the same Rolodex in hand. And one of the things that we see a lot is that their working relationships that they've had, they try to bring them into the lead provider. Once they've met a few quotas, then of course they're out of relationships. They continue to quest after new lead providers, but they just have some challenges, and so they just move to the next lead provider. So there's a solution in here for large lead providers that have a sales team, and you just want to be more effective at fueling that sales team for higher growth rate. You could also be a lead buyer. Maybe you kind of snuck into this session. You just want to see from the inside, get a little peek at what lead providers and lead aggregators are actually talking about. And in actuality, this actual solution came from providing and generating leads for direct mortgage lenders, direct insurance agents, direct legal firms. So we're using techniques that even a lead provider can do to make their lead buys more effective, or simply understand this business a little bit better. So here's my fundamental philosophy when we're talking about stopping the churn and stopping the need to constantly be on this chasing of lead buyers. One is the only way to actually grow a lead company is begin to start training the salespeople that are buying your lead. Train our customers to be a better customer. And of course, again, I mentioned this once before, but in our digital first, digital only age, really the only way to effectively do that training is with content marketing and deliver it digitally. The good news is more and more folks are getting comfortable with this. They're actually seeking out this type of training as content, and this can be very cost effective because you're not building up large training forces. You're not doing travel. You're simply providing the content to make them a better customer. So if we haven't met before, my name is Bill Rice. I'm the founder and CEO of Kaleido. I've been in and around this business for the better part of 2 decades. Actually started in 2000 as part of a small team that built one of the first internet banks, and we were one of the early, if not one of the first set of buyers from LendingTree. So we bought, at the time, every single home equity lead that LendingTree could generate it. So been on both sides of this since 2008. We've been actually generating leads specifically for financial services and legal industries. That's kind of our core niches, and we're developing those leads or generating those leads directly for those companies and those lenders. And then since about 2010, I've actually built out several programs to help lead providers market themselves out into that same type of industry base and network. So I'm just going to kind of guess who's in this room. I did a little bit of a pre-poll before we actually did this presentation. And this is kind of what I found out. You're probably either one of the individuals on a sales team that's hunting for these lead providers, or maybe you're one of the salespeople that's just frustrated with constantly having to convince lead buyers that your lead is of a higher quality. So whenever we're talking about sales, oftentimes salespeople are actually trying to overcome an objection that's really the wrong conversation. And this is a perfect example. It's going to be very difficult for you to overcome an objection from any type of lead provider about the quality of your lead, because the fact of the matter is most of us use similar techniques, and therefore the quality factor is going to be really insignificant from lead provider to lead provider. A lot of the actual effectiveness on those leads, and we've done some studies even internally, the difference between an aged lead and a brand new lead from a top tier lead provider, really with the right sales process and the right sales techniques in place, there's not a lot of difference in that conversion. Now, there's some systems, some timing, and some things that are a little bit different, but all in all, if you're just to do the straight conversion rate on those, given the effective processes and different processes for each of those are about the same. So trying to compete on lead quality is going to be very difficult. And then, of course, a lot of you, and this has been sort of a new evolution of the industry, are just spending a ton of money against trying to improve your leads, appending data, using new technology, new processes, and really just kind of loading up the expense of that actual lead when the margin is already relatively thin on some of these. So I'm going to try to give you some approaches that will solve sort of these three dilemmas that you guys may have top of mind as you sit here. We could solve all of that simply by teaching the lead provider how to sell and convert internet consumers. And then ultimately, the second piece of solving this problem is really teaching them how to be a better lead buyer itself. So solving the sales process and actually making them better at working the leads is one thing. And some of this has kind of been talked about or tried in the industry. But the second piece of this is sort of an evolving and really effective strategy is just teaching them to be a lead expert themselves and to more effectively understand the value proposition of the leads that they're buying from you. So along the way, as we sort of execute this process, there's a few things that we're going to get and gather that are extra benefits over just having a steady flow of lead providers and not having to chase them down and making them happier so that they're not actually churning out of their accounts. But along the way, by implementing this approach, you're going to improve your brand awareness and loyalty out into the market. You're actually going to grow your market because you're going to be able to go out into the periphery of the audience. We're also focused on people that are actually already buying leads or maybe of a certain size that have the capacity to buy leads. But the actual market potential of the people who could be buying leads and have the type of businesses that would benefit from buying leads is much larger. But because of the way that we actually go after lead providers, we're only taking out a small, heavily sort of beat up and gone over set of fundamental known lead buyers. And then ultimately, once we get them in the door and they're working our leads and they're working with us, we're going to talk about retaining them better. So Kaleido, we're actually an agency, and so we live on our retainer. We live on retaining clients for the long haul. And so we're going to take some of those techniques and we're going to put them into this system to help you as a lead provider be more effective at actually holding on and getting higher customer satisfaction. And then ultimately, all of those things that are going into this process is going to actually lift the perception of lead quality. Because when I started all the way back on that second slide and said that internet leads suck or leads suck, really what we're dealing with is a perception, not an actuality. For the most part, like I said, these leads are generated in a highly professional, highly competent, the industry's gotten more and more sophisticated. These are consumers with intent. The problem is we have this perception because, again, our sales process, the lead buyer's sales process is misaligned with the type of lead that they're buying. So let's take you through an actual case study before I sort of pull it apart. So I first came across this in 2010 in working with selling aged leads. And talk about a quality problem, right? We are selling leads or that have been aged or remnant, and these are anywhere from 30 to 90-day old leads. But of course, the challenge didn't necessarily stop there. Of course, when you're working those leads, it's been a while since that consumer actually expressed that intent. But there's a lot of reasons to believe that consumer is still in the market. But the challenge wasn't just the actual lead quality problem. The bigger challenge was really that the market was so small. There were so few people, especially in 2010, that even knew to look for aged leads or to ask about aged leads. Remnant's been a thing in advertising for years and years. You get remnant on billboards. You get remnant in digital ad space. You get remnant in newspapers and magazines. But the actual concept of remnant inside of an internet lead was really a small and unknown concept, and not a lot of lead buyers were thinking about the possibility of getting this really affordable lead type. And then, of course, the third and probably the biggest challenge was there was just a negative impression of these leads, higher than the negative impression in general of internet leads, because they have been sitting around for a while or they had been neglected for 30 to 90 days. But guess what? Within the industry, and this is kind of where I started when I started working with this client, is I started to find out that actually the top clients, if you will, the people that knew about aged leads and understood the value of them, were actually these telemarketing and live transfer firms that were beginning to emerge around this time. So they were buying all this remnant for extra cheap. They were actually doing the effective sales processes in order to warm these leads up and actually affect a live transfer, a hot person. So when I looked at that problem, I said, this is an effective lead source, and we've just got to figure out how to market it. So I started with these fundamental marketing objectives. I wanted to enlarge that market. I wanted to enlarge the number of people that understood remnant in the context of digital or internet leads. I wanted to increase the transparency. I wanted people to, when they were buying this, not just look at it and say, hey, I'm getting a lead for $1, but to truly understand what they were getting and set the expectations for the type of lead that they were buying. Know where they came from, feel comfortable with the source of the lead, how it was actually generated, and then ultimately truly understand the consumer that they were going to be reaching out to, which makes all of the difference. If you really understand the context of the consumer that you're trying to contact, can make all of the difference. And then ultimately, we developed a sales process and system that would reliably close these leads. And we wanted to make the market aware that there was an actual process, there was a set of techniques that would close these type of aged deals. So the proof is in the pudding always. Here was ultimately our results, and this continues to be a client, so these continue to be our results today. In any given month, we actually sell over $100,000 in leads every single month, and that's without a single salesperson. So these are, again, super cheap, so you can guess we are selling lots of leads every single month, and there's not a salesperson on the staff. These are largely retained customers and new customers that are coming in and buying and staying in a retained, ongoing lead buying relationship. How do we do this? We worked on a content marketing program that allowed us to actually rank on page 1 for all of the major lead types that we sell. And as a result, we often compete well because we are an affordable alternative to real-time leads. So again, enlarging that audience and making them aware of this remnant opportunity in the market. And we didn't just stop there. In fact, we didn't even start there. That was kind of a byproduct of some of the other content marketing and SEO things that we were doing. We actually started by actually going after the sales skills market and ranking for the most important fundamental sales skills that are needed to close internet leads. And we did that both in Google and in YouTube. YouTube can never be forgot about in any sort of marketing plan or strategy, but particularly here when we're talking about sales, salespeople just gobble up YouTube, and there's a huge market to be had. So let's break down the secret sauce. Kind of talked about what we were trying to achieve and some of the results that we've gotten, and maybe even tipped you off to how we were able to get those results. But now I'm going to break it down into basically 3 secrets that can be repeated within your own lead generation company. So the first one you heard me talk about just a tiny bit, and that is the opportunity to harvest sales traffic. So if you go into any SEO tool or PPC tool and just look at the keywords around sales techniques, tactics, and strategies, it's an enormous audience. Every salesperson, I characterize myself as a salesperson, even myself, is constantly questing after the new process, the new technique, maybe the new sort of twist in a word or a phrase here, or maybe a different way to overcome an objection, or maybe different ways to set up different drip email processes, or maybe how to organize or prioritize my CRM and my sales queue. But the basic fact of the matter is that the audience for sales training is, like I said, enormous, and they're specifically looking for little silver bullets. And this was one of our key sort of secret sauces. It's not really trying to boil the ocean, but try to give little sales tidbits, little silver bullets that they could actionably apply today and have some impact. And of course, we're filling this need. We're dipping into this market simply with content, which is, again, a relatively affordable way to go into the market. It's just to provide those little tidbits, to provide that content. And then ultimately, we were going beyond that core little audience. It's even a smaller circle of lead buyers that know about aged leads, and the circle of people that know about internet leads is pretty small too. But now we were able to go and enlarge that circle, one, by actually encountering or being around or making aware people that knew about internet leads, but maybe not aged leads. And then even more, we were able to introduce ourselves to an enormous sales audience of folks that might not know about internet leads or aged leads. So the first thing, just harvest a lot of that sales traffic that's out there looking for solutions. So like I said, we did this with content, we did this with SEO, and then ultimately we refined all of this by creating sales resource centers. So actual places, much like you can even look at this example, kind of looks like Netflix, where instead of binging on YouTube, you can actually go to the sales resource center within the context of internet leads themselves, or in our case, age leads. You can actually binge through the techniques that will make you more effective on the particular lead type that you're interested in. The second piece is to then hook them on your sales methodology. So again, if you're a salesperson, which most of you probably are, you've probably got your favorite sales guru out there, the person that you follow, the person that you trust, the technique and the processes that you've incorporated and had success with it. What we're actually trying to do here is make your brand, maybe even a personality within your brand, that particular guru, that person where your lead buyers start to trust you, start to feel comfortable and feel the impact of the things that you're teaching, and they become their techniques. So you're ultimately trying to teach them to be better salespeople, but really you're trying to hook them on your approach to some of these fundamental sales skills. Some of the things that I like to focus on, providing sales scripts. Of course, that gets them just into action by just using sales script and being a little bit more organized. A lot of times salespeople don't use sales scripts, so sales scripts are really effective in just getting them to use a disciplined technique. And so any sales script you put in front of them, they will immediately feel some impact if they use it with some discipline, because it just organizes them better. They feel cleaner and more confident in front of the consumers they're talking to. Cold calling, ultimately, when we're talking about internet leads and that initial outreach, we need them to understand that in a lot of ways it's similar to a cold call. That internet lead is probably talked to a lot of people, filled out a lot of forms, and they probably don't know. So the techniques of building relationships and a cold calling sort of sales skill is directly applicable to these. Voicemails. We leave lots of voicemails, or we drop lots of voicemails. And so giving them techniques around how to make those voicemails more effective. And then, of course, if you're really going to be effective with internet leads, we all know you just have to be a rock star with email and text messages, and simply how to build those follow-ups. But they can get complex. Not only are they complex in that oftentimes people try to overdo them and try to, instead of making that email or text feel natural and feel like you're emailing or texting a friend or making something really short. Instead, they whip out the big long marketing email or a big long text message. They start to beg, those sorts of things. So again, all of these are just fundamental skills that we need to tune against the internet lead and make them a better buyer and a better and more effective when they do buy. The other two things that are really important, I guess the bigger category, is just building systems. Again, we know with internet leads and the fact that a lot of these are shared or the consumer themselves are just simply doing a lot of shopping, it is so important to have a system that automates a lot of your follow-up. So we want to provide that content as well. How to do sales automation, how to make their CRM more effective and optimizing that using those priority queues and things like that. So ultimately, we're trying to hook them on our way. So we're giving away a lot of content. We're building a library of videos that actually let them hear how we do some cold calling, hear how we overcome objections, videos to actually lay out and demonstrate some systems, some sales scripts that we have. And then, of course, the actual sales scripts themselves, actually giving away the content the collateral that will allow them to implement. So we've given away not only sales scripts themselves, but also drip campaigns is one of the hottest hits whenever we're working with a lead generation provider, is to actually give away some of those automation techniques, or as is, ready to go, plug them into your sales automation, emails and text messages that can apply. Really, you can use similar techniques across any particular lead vertical, and they will work for every single one of your lead buyers. So give that away to them, and again, you're going to hook them on your approach. Then finally, once we've got them sort of aware of us, and then we've actually taught them and made them a disciple of our particular sales approach, our particular sales process, then you introduce them to the crack. You give them the leads, right? Once they've got a good foundation and they know how to actually sell against these leads, there's nothing more powerful than turning to them and say, hey, now that you've got the system down, now that you've had a little success with the leads themselves, guess what? You can have an unlimited supply of leads, which can be simply game changing, right? We've seen the Quicken Loans, the Loan Depots, the Fairways of the world. Those have all been transformed by the ability to essentially have an unlimited supply of sales leads, of consumers coming into the top of their funnel. And that's what, once you get those first two sort of things in order, you can offer that as the value proposition, not around quality, but simply this unlimited supply. So in order to really make this stick, though, you have to turn them into experts, experts in leads, experts in understanding how leads are generated, what exactly they're going to get, the type of expectations they should have with them, and then maybe even give them insight into how the sausage is made, how landing pages work, what the consumer is actually experiencing. You don't necessarily have to show them your secret sauce, but generally getting them to understand these things can be really powerful in making them confident in staying in the lead market, and confident in staying in the lead market maybe when the overall market takes a dip, or the overall market even heats up, and staying with you like we went through in the mortgage market with refi. If you've done these things, those buyers will stay with you and take those discounts that you're getting, because they know that that fuel is more than right now. They're actually filling that database and building out referrals and that sort of thing. So they'll continue to buy leads from you in any type of market. And that really comes down to teaching them the equation, return on ad spend. So often lead buyers get focused on the wrong thing. They get focused on the actual cost of the lead and the overall expense that they're going through as they're buying these leads every single month, and they're not actually calculating them against the return and revenue. And so you'll see them get a bill or get an invoice, and they're like, wow, that invoice has gotten really big, and as a result they cancel for a couple months and coast out. Or maybe they're buying too many and they're getting overwhelmed and they're actually not getting that return. So teaching them some of those techniques of actually just being a better buyer and using that ROAS equation to figure out if they are continuing to get the return that they need to achieve profitability in their business will allow them to be confident in just continuing to buy from you and continue to backfill their actual sales team and fill that up and essentially infinitely spend on leads. That goes down to, again, briefing, presentation, webinars, teaching them about the lead industry, actually providing them spreadsheets to let them calculate that, or tools to allow them to calculate. And one of the things that we like to do, in addition to just delivering an invoice, but actually deliver, if we can, sometimes we can't, but some form of an ROI connected with that. So that can work in a couple ways. A lot of times we don't actually know when they close. And so you can't do a true ROAS calculation, but you can tell them, hey, on average, what is a lead worth to you based on your conversion rates? Because they are tracking those usually, and we can build out that ROAS calculation based on some assumptions. And it's nice to come in every single month with not only the invoice, but actually the return and the impact that you've had on their business. Again, this is a technique we've taken from our agency experience and just delivered that over into the actual lead buying experience. So it's so important to deliver not only the expense of the invoice, but also insight into the return that they were able to achieve. So, are you ready to stop chasing and churning? Well, the answer is simple. Start training your network to be top producers and then sell them the fuel. This really is just in a picture, the content marketing framework that we use with lead providers. It shows you the type of content that we're building and sort of the places in the funnel that it actually lives. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you can go ahead and download the deck and get the strategy that goes into a lot more detail around this. And of course, reach out to me via phone or email. Be happy to talk to you more about putting this type of strategy into place for your lead generation company.